So I'm Matt Davis. I'm a fireman.
How long have you been a fireman, Matt?
Almost 9 years.
Tell me a little bit about being a firefighter. What got you into that profession?
Profession of firefighter really came to me whenever I was younger. I was about 12 or 13, and I actually wanted to be a paramedic. I didn't really know about the fire service until probably I was 18 or 19, and I found out I could go to Camden, which is a fire academy, for free if I was on volunteer service. So a buddy of mine, he died whenever he was 16, I was 18. So I joined the volunteer service, went down to Camden in 2006, found out the benefits of being a fireman, work 1 day, off 2 days, get to fight fire, save lives, and save cats, all that good stuff. And it kind of piqued my interest, and then I found out that you also could be EMT doing it at the same time. So I got the best of both worlds, the adrenaline junkie side, and I also got the medical side of it too. I've always, my whole life, I've always been in dramatic instances. Like my dad fell off the scaffold whenever I was 12. My mom, she got kicked off a horse and had brain damage whenever I was 6. So I've had some pretty traumatic incidences that's happened early on in my life, and I handled those very well. And I always thought, man, if somebody else went through that, I want to be there to help the situation, not to hurt it, because it sucks. It's a bad day. How can I make it better? And that's kind of the person that I am. I'll try to take the shirt off my back to make you better or make it a better day, or even to just to ease it up.
So you started out as being a volunteer. You got on to...
I got on to the fire department, paid department in 2011. I started out at Central, running downtown all the time, and of course you got all the fire alarms and all the junk, and you're just like, after a while you just kind of get like, really, is this really all we do? And then I transferred out to a station that's out in Southwest. Man, it was a whole different atmosphere. Whenever we got a fire, we were there for a while. Medical runs, it ranged anywhere from, people you can't talk to because of translation problems, to, you have gangs to where you have families, and it was just a huge cultural difference compared to what I was introduced to as in the fire department. The call volume was quality instead of quantity. We still had, quite a few runs during the day. 10, 12 was on average. So we got good runs, but the quality of runs that we got was so much more than what we were getting downtown, and just fire alarms or just this, just that. Yeah, we still got that down there, but man, there'd be at least 1 or 2 calls a shift to where you would actually matter. You could actually put your finger on something and say, man, I did this today. That's what you're looking for on being on the fire department, is being able to say, I did this.
Now, for those that maybe are watching and don't know anything about the service, what do you mean by quality calls?
Quality calls are whenever, instead of somebody calling and just saying, oh, I stubbed my toe, or I need help up. Those are quality calls too. If they're older, those never bother me. But a lot of times you get people who they don't know what to do whenever they're just sick. They don't know to go to a regular doctor. They don't know, the only system they know is to call 911. And so when you show up, you're really asking yourself, why is this person even calling? I mean, this is stupid. This is an ignorant call. You have no idea, why you're even calling 911. Yeah, you got a cough. Okay. Go to the doctor, Yeah. You don't need to be calling an ambulance for a cough, or a stubbed toe, or my kid hasn't been able to go to the bathroom. We've been on stuff like that. But the quality calls are whenever you show up and somebody's actually hurt. Somebody's needing some freaking help, and it's a dark matter. And you can usually tell it whenever you first pull up on scene if somebody else is there, depending on how frantic that other person is on whether or not the call has any legitimacy to it. So I got diagnosed with PTSD, complex PTSD, in July of 2019. Most people just know PTSD. They don't know what complex PTSD is. They don't know what the differences are. A lot of the soldiers and stuff like that were coming through, they would have, so many different ranges of PTSD that you can't just pinpoint everybody in the same box. Everybody was different. Well, you could take a select few that were on fire missions, that were on, heavily, fought wars or battles, and you can bring that home and they don't let that go. And then you can say, okay, that's complex PTSD. With us in the fire service, I always thought, man, it would suck to be deployed. I'd hate to be a PTSD veteran, and I can't let the war go. Well, what I found out is a lot of these veterans that are coming back are saying, man, I'd hate to be a fireman or a police officer having to go through this every day, because deployments end. We're doing this for 28 years. So we're not seeing the stuff that's not here, but we are seeing the community getting hurt. The biggest problem that you run into is when you do get diagnosed with PTSD is people look at you different. They're going to look at you a whole different way. My whole story, it all began with the rash of bad runs in 2016.
What are some of the ones that stuck out the most to you from 2016?
Oh man, so I killed, and whenever I say I killed, it means that we had a death, we had a code. Somebody was dead and CPR was in progress, or we have to do CPR. So I ran on 5 infants that were fatalities within 6 months. I ran on 2 guys that got hit by cars, a family that got hit by a car, and these are all deaths. A pretty traumatic car wreck. We had an 18-month-old that got raped. I got electrocuted in a house fire. And that's what topped it off, was whenever I got electrocuted, because that's the one that scared the absolute shit out of me. And that's whenever everything that I went through so fast that I didn't process came back and started to flood in. And it didn't happen until after I got electrocuted and realized that, hey, something's up. Something is up. I didn't realize it. I never saw it. And it went on for a year and a half before all of a sudden I started seeing warning signs. And then by the time I saw warning signs, it's already too late. People can tell you or hint around it or whatever, and you can just blow it off, and you make your own excuses. You make, you self-medicate, you drink, whatever else it is. And I went from being a social drinker to, I was drinking all the time. It's not that you plan it, it's just you'll start your day and something will trigger, and once that trigger starts, you can't stop it. Because I didn't have the education of how to make that go away. It affected my marriage, it affected the kids. I'd walk home from work, and as soon as I'd walk in the door, kids would stay a certain distance away from me, and I never saw it and noticed it, but they'd stay a certain distance away from me. So as they're staying a certain distance away from me, I'm trying to get closer to them and be like, hey, what's up? They're, watch out for daddy, don't poke the bear. And you don't see that, you don't realize it. And then the wife has to kind of figure out where you're at, what stage, and usually they know if it's been a bad night or not. Whether you didn't have any sleep, whether you saw something bad, whether you had a fire or not. They usually know that whenever you first walk in the door, and it's kind of mind blowing that they can pick up on it the way that they do. But it played a huge impact on me and the wife, and the relationship that we had, and it played a huge impact on my friends too, because I didn't realize I was shutting them out as well. I guess what really started the whole process of me deteriorating down was, so the first call that really stuck out was whenever we had a guy that hit a pole next to the station. We could hear the actual wreck, and whenever we got up there, the A-post was actually split the guy's head in half. And so that had hit, and it hit the guy right square in the side of the face. And so when we pull up, all we see is just the arm hanging out. And then whenever we walked up to him, we noticed that it's just crinkled up, man. I mean, it was just a mess. Not to go into graphic detail, but it was a mess. We were finding parts, yards, feet away, 50 feet away, you know. And so we had to extricate the body on that. But the thing, extricating the body wasn't the deal. It was hearing the car wreck and then going to it and then seeing how dramatic it was. The next call that would be after that would be the high-speed pursuit. We had it comes across the tones as pedestrian hit by a car. We get that quite a bit, but for some reason this one felt different. It felt different because the way that it come in from police. Whenever we make the turn, you can see blue lights. It's pretty close, and then you can see blue lights that's further away, about 100 yards away. So as we're pulling up, there's this car that's on its upside down. So we stopped there because we figured that's where it was at. The cop said, no, you need to go up to the next one. So we go up to the next one, and there was a mother and her daughter. Her daughter was in her 20s that had gotten hit by a car, and the mother had gotten hit so hard that she had gotten folded up and was pushed underneath the parked car. And then the daughter was laying on the sidewalk. So I knew the mother that was underneath the car, I mean, she was literally folded in half under the car. I knew she was dead. So there's no reason for me to even try to work on her. So I pulled the daughter over. As soon as I lifted her eyelids, both of her eyes were in the back of her head just twitching, going to town. And I knew she was circling the drain, you know, fixing to die. So I started working on her the best I could. And I never even got any closure out of that. That was just a sucky day. You know, it's a bad day to be a patient. Come to find out that there was a police officer that started that tried to pull over a felon, and the felon ran. Well, whenever he topped a hill, he topped it at over 100 miles an hour, lost control, and hit the mother and daughter that was walking down the sidewalk. So innocent bystanders get caught up and get killed on bad days. We've had a couple of shootings that kind of stuck with me a little bit. One of my sons shot his own dad. Turned off, it was a straight up murder call. He'd shut the breakers off to the house and waited around the corner for his dad to come around the corner, and he shot him with a shotgun just to kill him. That's pretty powerful, to be able to sit there and want your own dad dead that bad. We did that, and then we had a rash of shootings where people were shot in the head, people were shot, you know, in the chest. People were dying on us left and right, man. I mean, it was like a plague. Then we had a fire where we pulled a guy out of a fire, and he lived for about 30 days, and then he died. Then we had another fire. We were second due in, and we were a second due company on scene, second due company inside the house, and they found him, and I was one of the ones dragging him out. He didn't make it. And I guess the weird part about all of it, this is all happening within 16, 18 months. I mean, this was like a rash of just bad juju all at one time. You know, it wasn't like spread out over the 6 years, 7 years that I was out there. This was all really condensed, really high speed, really, really fast. And the scary part about it was, man, I thought I was 10 foot tall and invincible. We were blowing and going. We were literally, there was days where I was like, man, we're saving lives. We're actually doing what we're getting paid to do.
Making a difference.
We're making a frickin' difference. You know, oh man, it was awesome. Best feeling you could ever imagine. I mean, there's no other words to explain it. I mean, you're blowing and going, and you're doing your thing, and you're just, dude, you're pounding it out. You're pounding the street. People are recognizing what you're doing. We're putting house fires out on tank water. You know, we're doing things that you're not even supposed to be able to do. You know, I've gotten, I believe it's either 4 or 6 awards over this little stint. They're not on the wall. They're not on the wall. I don't ever talk about them to people. I don't ever wear the little badges like I'm supposed to. Because for me, that's for me. That's not for somebody else to see and say, oh, he's done this or that. They don't need to know what I've done. they're not on the wall because they remind me of a bad day somebody had. But it was supposed to be my intervention that changed their bad day to a good day. Just because my intervention, it doesn't necessarily mean it saved their life. It just means I did my job, what I get paid to do. Big whoopee. Man, when you go through hell like what I went through and was going through it, there's nothing that can stop you. I mean, you feel 10 foot tall and invincible. You're making a difference. You're pounding that pavement. You're doing your job. You know, you're really doing your job. You're getting recognized for what you're doing, and it makes you feel good about yourself. The only problem is it happened so fast that one day it all changed. It all went from you doing your job to you went above and beyond and you didn't even know it. To, oh man, I could have died. Oh man, I could have died this time too, or this other time. Didn't even know it. And that's where the warrior mentality comes in, you know, but I didn't die, so we're good. Suck it up, Buttercup. So we did, and that's where the drinking started. Once that started, you know, you start trying to vent. You start trying to figure out ways to vent, and there's nobody to vent to because there's nobody that really wants to talk to somebody who's either drunk at midnight or, you know, they just don't want to talk about it. The day that we ran on the 18-month-old girl, things started to change.
This was all still in 2016, correct?
Every bit of it, 16 and 17. And when we ran the little girl, we got it as an assault on a child, so we had to hold short, wait for police to clear the scene. When we got there's a guy standing in the middle of the street holding a kid, waving us in, you know. So we go in there to it, and man, as we were there, the longer we were there, you could see more and more bruising showing up on this girl's face. And he was telling us a story about how he just got out of the shower, and, you know, this happened while he was there, but he'd been gone for a while and come back, and the story was really just all over the place. You know, he went to go get a haircut, and then he come back and took a shower, and then all of a sudden this kid was like this. There's another male that was there too, and that they were staying with. And so I was the first one to walk into the apartment, and this guy was trying to tell me that this kid had bit her tongue. And I knew better than that just by what I was seeing. And whenever we walked in there, he picked up this pillow off a bed, and it just had this blotchy, bright pink blood all over it. I showed up to work the next day, and I was told that the girl was raped by the guy that was standing next to me that was holding the pillow and everything else. And that's whenever it blew my mind. You know, it really blew my mind. That one kind of hurt. That one hit home pretty hard. And soon after that, in the same apartment complex, every time we'd pull in there, I'd always look to the left, and I could always remember seeing that guy and that little girl standing out there in that deal every time we'd pull in there. Probably 2 or 3 months later, we had another call of a kid choking in there. And so I was driving. Whenever I whipped in there, we had a mother that come running down with this kid, and this kid's just kind of bobbling his head back and forth, turning blue. And I grabbed the kid up, flip him upside down, and I start doing back blows to him. And as I was doing back blows, Mims was showing up, and the thing I'll never forget was one of the paramedics was in there, and as soon as he seen me walking towards the ambulance, you know, giving back thrust to this kid, he just looks at his partner and says, "Oh shit," you know. So they knew it was legit. And by the time I got into the ambulance, he was crying, talking, and everything else. Man, and like I said, it's just a plethora of just bad days, you know, and you're making the best out of these bad days. Because, I mean, you're going on these bad calls and stuff of people getting hit by cars, people getting hit, you know, in car wrecks, people getting shot, and then you're going back to the fire station. You're just sitting down and eating dinner like, man, that sucks for him. You know, let's have lasagna. Right. You know, I mean, it's It's a normal Tuesday. Whenever you start seeing death and dismemberment and destruction, and you're saying it's just a normal Tuesday, that's when there's starting to be a problem. And whenever mine finally boiled over, is we got a call for a structure fire, and it was right at shift change. Jump on the rig, we get there, and it's just like anything else, man. I'm ready to go. I'm 10 foot tall and invincible. We're gonna go dance in the devil's kitchen, yeehaw. And so we cowboy up, and I ran up to the front door, and I had a different captain that morning, and he said, let's go. And that's all I ever need to hear, and I'm gone. And so I take off, and I get to the fire room. The room's on fire. I mean, you can see it perfect. It's self-vented. It's already blowing and going, and I'm like, man, this is awesome. And I look up, and I remember there was no sheetrock. There's no sheetrock above me, none. So I was like, man, they've been doing like remodels. So I'm thinking this all at the same time. They must have been remodeling this place. So I'm spraying water in there, and there's fire all above me, and I've already put all the fire out below me. So I start spraying up. Well, whenever I go to spray up, I'm using a smoothbore nozzle, and it's shooting a solid stream out, and I hit the corner of the house, of the actual gable end of the house. And whenever I hit that corner, all I saw was it looked like a lightning bolt come back and hit me. And it just made a zzz, ow. And that's what I remember. And I remember clenched up. I was against the side of the hallway or the doorway I was in, and the captain that was with me, he was behind me far enough to where he couldn't see me. But he saw it light up, and then he saw and heard it too. And he asked me what was it, and I just told him, I said, just get out. Because I didn't know what had hit me. I didn't know if it was a wire fell on me. I didn't know if it was, what it was. But all I knew is it bit me, and it bit me hard. And I've been hit by 220. I've been hit by 110. This wasn't a 220 or a 110. This was something that, literally I was hurting. I was clenched up, and I was hurting. And so I come walking out of the house, and I'm walking out, and I'm twitching and everything else. And they asked me what happened. I told them I got electrocuted. And I'm trying to play it off. Oh, it ain't no big deal. It ain't no big deal. Just let me chill out for a second. We'll be good. So they made me get in the ambulance. My heart rate was up there in 160s. It was up there. My blood pressure was 240 and change. It was up there. Pulse was up there. It was just a shitstorm of a bad day. And while I was in there, they were trying to talk to me, and I wasn't making a whole lot of sense. So they said, well, you need to go to the hospital and, get evaluated. And I didn't want to go. Who wants to go in front of everybody else by ambulance to a freaking hospital in front of everybody over something stupid, This is ridiculous, Give me a hose line and let me go back in there and finish my job, This isn't going to affect me. Get off of me. Well, they made me go, and I was under 24-hour surveillance. And man, since then I could swear to you I got rewired. Ever since then, it rewired just how I thought, how everything was. The drinking intensified even more. Then the thoughts of, man, I almost died, coulda, woulda, shoulda, close call, this, that, and another. And I think the worst part about it was I was downplaying it so much that it was almost like I shouldn't have even went out of the house. I should have just stayed in there and toughed it out. Then one day, I was over at a buddy's house, and they got foster kids. And this is where Chernobyl begins. So we've been on all these bad calls. I'm super proud of everything I'm doing. Everybody's like, woo, go you go. You're awesome. You're amazing. I go over to a buddy of mine's house, and he's got a 2-year-old foster child at his house that has been abused her whole life. And she dropped something, or I tried to give her something, try to hand it to her, and she clenched up to me. And whenever she did that number, it was like a switch flipped. And all of a sudden, everything in that Rolodex of bad calls started popping up. Because once you think about one, it leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. And it's almost like by number puzzle, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and they keep going up. And so once that happened, me and the wife were supposed to go out that night, and I don't remember leaving their house. I don't remember showing up at the restaurant. The next thing I remember was I was about 5 pitchers of beer deep. I don't know how much alcohol I drank, drunker than Cooter Brown, and getting kicked out of this restaurant. And as we were leaving, I told the wife, I said, something's up. Something is going on. I don't know what it is. It's not the alcohol. It's not anything, but something is coming up. Something's coming out of me. I don't know what it is. Pull over. And she pulled over on the side of the road. And no sooner than I got out of the truck, I was crying. And I had no idea why. But when it did, it showed an ugly face that you can't describe. You have no control. You lose complete, utter control of your emotions. You lose your complete control of not your actions, but I was still clear-headed enough to where I was trying to make a phone call. I called 911. I called 911 on myself. I called the chief. I called the people I needed to call because I knew something was up. But man, I was hurting so bad, I couldn't even get up and stand up, and I was telling people to get back. I had a lady stop, and she asked, "Sir, do you need any help?" As I'm sitting on the side of the road, screaming and hollering my heart out, and I'm sitting there crying as if I just watched the most brutal murder, out there. These 2 cops showed up, and one of them come running up there to me, and he said, "Where'd you serve at?" As if I was a soldier, a veteran that come back from war. And I told him, I said, "I haven't served anywhere. I'm a fireman." And he said, "Man, you must have went through some shit." I said, "I have. I'm hurting. I just need a hug. I'm not here to fight. I just need a hug. I'm a hugger." And I'm drunk while this is all going on. And so this cop comes up to me, and I wrap him up. And this other cop pulls up. And whenever he sees me wrap him up, he thought we were fighting. So he comes running over there, and he's trying to tackle me. And I'm not just the smallest guy in the world, but I'm not the biggest boy in the world. But he tried to tackle me, and I just wrapped him up too. And so I'm hugging both of them, crying on both of these cops, and I'm just bawling my eyes out on them. It's just they literally are like, "What the hell is going on?" People think that the alcohol is what caused it. Well, it's not. What caused it was the calls compounded on me so hard and so fast that I couldn't process them. And when they came back in a tidal wave. And I lost control of myself enough to where I started drinking to where I didn't stop drinking. And then that's when I realized that I wasn't necessarily, how do I put this? I wasn't drinking because I wanted to. I was drinking because I had to.
To suppress the memories?
Self-medicate. And that's how I was pumping through all this. That's how I was able to go through everything, get off a shift by 7 o'clock. I knew what time the liquor store opened. I knew exactly how much to get, when to get it, and everything else. And it got to a point where I was going through 1.5 pints, 2 pints a day. I knew something was just bad wrong. And after I'd gotten out of the hospital and everything else, ended up with all this grief stuff. I didn't even know how to handle it. And I've been trying to go see a therapist. I've been trying to see all these people, and it just seems like none of it's helping. None of it is helping. The first therapist I went and saw, I made her cry within the first 5 minutes of just some of the small stuff that we run on. So I went from being not the victim, but I went from being the patient to being the counselor. That's not what I was looking for. That's not what I was needing.
What kind of counselor was she?
It was a trauma counselor. I got told by 3 doctors and 5 therapists that I didn't need to go back to the fire department. 3 doctors, 5 therapists. 4 of them I made cry before I left out of there. 2 of those 3 doctors I made cry before I left out of that room, just because of half of what I had to tell them, and I hadn't even told them the whole stories. And so I said, I've got to go somewhere. So I went to the IFF IAFF Center of Excellence up in Baltimore, because I didn't know if this was the beginning of something, the middle of something, the end of something. I didn't know. Didn't have a clue. But I had a lot of unresolved questions in my mind, and I had a lot of grief going on. And so I loaded up and packed my stuff, and within the next 12 hours, I was in Baltimore getting checked into a rehab facility. And this rehab facility that I went into is specialized just for firefighters and EMS, as long as you're paying them within the union. You have to want to get better. You have to want to figure out what's wrong with you. You have to identify what's wrong with you. Then you have to be able to work on what's wrong with you. So you have to do all this self-help stuff, and you feel helpless already. So what good is self-help if you're already helpless? Well, it builds you back up. You're already broken down. You're already torn apart. You're nothing. You're literally just nothing. They give you a foundation of education is what they give you. And they teach you how to eat. They teach you how to set your alarm clock. They literally take you from square one. And they teach you these things. And within a week, I had slingshotted all the way from, I went from the lowest point to where I'm not at a high, but I'm riding a roller coaster. I'm going up. And then we start talking about some of the things, and I drop back down again. Because whenever you start talking about these things, it can get raw. It can get rough. They get all the way into, the intimacy of your life, with your wife, with your kids, really with your friends. And whenever they start getting into intimacy, you're thinking, man, that's none of your business. Dude, these people have to know this stuff. Because if they don't know, how can they help?
Right.
I didn't realize that my relationship was so far down the drain that it wasn't to the point where she was ready to leave, but it's just a shitty marriage. It's horrible. It was hard to deal with me. It's hard to figure me out. It's hard to understand. It's hard to do things with me, for me, around me.
Right.
And then it turned into, oh wow, I didn't know that I was this far gone. But whenever I went up to the center, I didn't go up there and they didn't strap me to a bed and say, all right, you're going to be here until you're good. They stuck me in a room with a whole bunch of clowns that were just like me, that were going through things, and they were all firemen. And then I realized that my story's close to this guy's story's close to mine. After class, we'd have a chat. Then next thing you know, people are coming up to me asking me questions about, hey, how did you deal with this? And then you kind of become the teacher, but you're also the student at the same time. And you're not going to therapy, you're going to classes. They're teaching you coping mechanism, coping skills. They're teaching you how to deal with triggers. And I can tell you, like right now, there's 4 or 5 triggers that's gone off since I've been here that I know how to cope with them and deal with them and how to suppress them. So, like some of the coping skills, like for me, is number one, if I start getting into one of those, oh gosh, I feel myself going down again, first thing I have to do is I have to pray. If that doesn't work, then I start tapping, something that brings me back to reality, something that's bringing you back. You're in a safe place, you're not in hell, you're not going through hell again, you're not there. So, tapping, praying. If that doesn't help, talk to somebody. Talk to a friend. Just walk past somebody and say, hey, how's your day going? Literally, it's the weirdest thing ever. You walk past somebody and just be like, hey, what's up, man? And they say, oh, everything's good, how are you? And that literally brings you back down to earth. If that doesn't work, call somebody. Talk to them for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it may be, If that doesn't work, it's time to go and take it up a notch, go and try to find somebody to talk to real quick.
So I know you had told me about complex PTSD versus regular PTSD. So what exactly is the difference, and how has that been with here in the state? I believe you told me you're like the first documented, or one of the first documented cases in the state of complex PTSD. Is that right?
In the fire service and returning back. So PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder, and it's usually over a single event. Whenever you have multiple events of different things happen, it turns into a complex PTSD because you can't pinpoint one specific thing that you're having a problem with. You're having a problem with multiple events, multiple things, multiple wars within yourself, within your mind, and you get lost. And so that's where the complex part comes in. But this job affects everybody. It affects everybody in a different way. It's going to affect you. It's going to find your weakness. It's going to test you. But if you've got a good network and a good support system, there's not a reason why you can't come back to this job unless you just don't want to. I didn't know I was so far gone that I was actually saying, I was in the very first process stage, or the very first stage of actually the suicidal side of it. The scary thing about it was I saw that. I felt it. I didn't get that far deep down into that cloud, but I felt it. And it's not that you want to die. It's you don't know how to make this stuff end. You don't know how to get the pain to go away.
What are some other signs that people can look for that are maybe in this profession, or maybe it's a spouse of somebody in this profession? What are some signs that, hey, something's not quite right here? We need to start at least talking to maybe try to curve it before it gets to that point.
So you have what they call a window. This window is whenever you have a traumatic incident happen. Traumatic incident could be anything from almost having a wreck to losing a baby, losing an infant. Like I said, I lost 5 of them right there, back to back to back. If it's not not necessarily out of your mind, but if you're still thinking about it every single day, after 7 to 14 days, you need to start talking to somebody. It's something that is going to affect you. It's something that is affecting you, whether you like it or not. On your spousal note, they're going to notice whether or not you're acting strange whenever you come home every shift. It's a lot of different things that can trigger it. Driving by the same scene over and over and over again, seeing a mark in the pavement or something like that, or seeing a cross on the side of the road on a call that you ran that you have to drive past every single day or multiple times a day. Oh man, every time you drive past it, you're going to sit there and think of that call. And if it hasn't processed through within that 7 to 14 days, you need to talk to somebody about it, what's going on. You need to be hyper vigilant about getting rid of that negativity, because it's stuck right there in the front of your mind of, man, this call is just really sticking with me. It's not going to just go away, but we need to get it back in that memory bank in the back of your mind. That's what EMDR is there for, or brain spotting.
How's your social life changed as far as from then to now? I mean, I know we talked a little bit about crowds and stuff like that.
Yeah, so it still develops. And it kind of fluctuates from day to day, and it's still kind of a fluid motion. The reason why I say it's a fluid motion is because sometimes I can really be okay with being in the middle of a crowd of 100 people. Then there's times where I can't be in the crowd of 5. But it doesn't have anything to do with the personnel there. It has to do with the noise that's going on, the amount of noise that's going on. Like even as we're sitting here, there were 4 or 5 people that was getting kind of loud, and I was about ready to take this bottle cap, throw it over there and tell them to shut up. But now it's kind of calmed back down again. I'm good again. But it was getting irritating. But yeah, we definitely go out and do things as a couple. Me and the wife do. We take the kids out a lot more. We plan vacations. We're getting back to a new normal, which has been going on for the past few months. We've gotten back to a new normal, and since we've gotten back to a new normal, we're still adjusting, but we're still seeing what works and what doesn't work, and everything's operating pretty smooth. I explain it like this. Think about every time that something goes on or something happens, they put a piece of a weight on you, 5-pound weight on you every time. Well, if you don't address that 5-pound weight on your back, you get another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. Well, 10 of those 5-pound weights is 50 pounds. That's a lot of weight. What about 100 of them? That's 500 pounds. How many calls do we go on, or how many bad days does a person have by the time they're 30? You think they'd have 200 or 300 days of bad days? Absolutely. So you carry all this weight around, and you have nowhere to vent it. And whenever you do vent it, it's usually whenever you're drunk and you get all emotional and want to cry it out and all this other stuff. You ought to try it sober. Once you do try it sober and you actually make yourself vulnerable and open up, man, you're going to actually feel weight lift off of you. You're not going to wake up the next morning and be like, oh man, I feel great. Yeah, you think you feel great until you realize you made an ass of yourself the night before. But when you do it sober, it makes a huge difference.
With this being the title of survivor, what would you consider yourself being a survivor of?
Being trapped in my own self. I could sit here and tell you that, oh, I'm a survivor of getting electrocuted in a house fire, or I'm a survivor of getting shot at, or whatever, but I'm free. I have no more chains on me. I don't have that dark cloud over my head anymore. I'm a survivor of my own self-pity, so to say. I'm a survivor of, it's hard to say, but I'd say I'm a survivor of a mental illness, of PTSD.